Hello.
Good evening, Anthony, and good evening, Graham.
Charles, can I stop you right now to say something very serious and very important?
I can't see you, which is obviously seriously important. I can just see the letter G.
Well, I'd just like to say, I swear that I will pay true allegiance to your majesty and to your heirs and successors according to law, so help me God.
Is that what we're all supposed to say tomorrow?
If we're, it doesn't matter if we're in M&S or the pub or in a park or watching at home on television, we're all supposed to say that.
On next Saturday? Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Are you going to say it? You've
I
just
am
said it, of
not.
course.
The thing is, if this was 1217 or maybe even like 1602,
Yeah.
I might think about it. But it's
Off with his
actually
head. Off with his head. Exactly.
it's 2023, and I'm a citizen, not a subject. So as much as I don't wish Charles any harm or
No.
ill will, I have no intention of behaving like some sort of peasant.
No, I understand that, Graham. But of course, I'm in a very privileged position
Mm.
because my name is Charles, and apparently not Charlie, but Charles, and apparently I can get lots of free deals on that day.
Well, you've
Uh,
always been a king, Charles, though.
Graham, how true, how absolutely true. But I haven't
I thought
sort of
it
read this
was.
in detail, but there was an article in the Guardian saying apparently if you call Charles, you're going to get certain special deals on the day. So, but not
Really?
Charlie. But I've never understood why anyone who's given the Christian name or the name first name Charlie rather than Charles, you lose the option. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
christened Charlie, are you going to suddenly become Charles? I doubt it.
Well,
It's
if you're
invariably
going to
the
get but if you're going to get a 2-for-1 pizza deal just by being called Charles, let's go for Charles.
yeah, but the proper Charles is the proper Charles, not the proper Charlie is Charles, and there's the problem. So
Yeah,
I'm
you'd be a proper Charlie if you were a Charlie.
Well, exactly, but you know how I'm reluctant to be anything other than Charles. But anyway, I've not really been feeling a proper Charlie for much of today. But we won't revisit pulling hen's
Don't
teeth
mention
out or
Leeds
whatever the
United.
expression is.
Don't mention
Don't
the war.
mention don't mention the war. So Graham, talking of wars, I guess the first war that's of interest is this one involving Ed Sheeran, who perished the thought it's being suggested that he may possibly have ripped off the late Marvin Gaye in a current copyright court case. You're wanting to express some sympathy for Ed Sheeran. I have to say,
Yeah,
I didn't think the song sounded remotely like Marvin Gaye, and I kind of
that's
thought
the
it was
whole point.
I thought it was an insult to Marvin Gaye to suggest that in any way Ed Sheeran could ever write a single song that was as good as anything that came from the
That's
canon of Marvin Gaye.
Yeah. I am no Ed Sheeran fan. I think he's like a hardworking, likable,
Yeah,
reasonable musician
yeah,
who co-writes all these songs with someone else,
yep,
and the songs all perform the function of the sort of thing you have to do these days to be worldwide successful. But I don't really
mm,
like that many of them.
no,
But in this occasion, I find myself entirely on his side because I too have heard Thinking Out Loud, which he released in 2014, which was number one in Britain, number two in the States, won a Grammy
mm,
Award, was a
mm,
massive worldwide hit. And it
mm,
doesn't sound a single thing like Let's Get It On. Now,
mm,
it does have a chord sequence in the chorus, which has the same chord sequence as part of the chorus of Let's Get It On. But apart from that, it doesn't sound anything like it. And he doesn't use that little chord sequence in the chorus
no.
to produce a Let's Get It On type effect whatsoever. It remains entirely an Ed Sheeran song, which is more the pity because, as you've said, I would rather listen to Marvin Gaye than Ed Sheeran. But it doesn't sound
Yeah,
like
I
Marvin
don't
Gaye.
think I've
So
ever said to Alexa, "Let's get it on, Alexa," and I don't mean rudely, Alexa. But I don't think I've ever said to her, you know, let's get it on and have some Ed Sheeran on here. No.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
but also, Graham, 2014, that's not exactly yesterday, it's beyond yesterday. Why does it take so long to spot the similarity? And on whose
Well,
behalf?
it's the heirs of the co-songwriter. So Marvin Gaye didn't write the song on his own. It was
No.
he had a co-songwriter, Ed Townsend, and
Yes.
his descendants, because I think he's also dead as well as Marvin Gaye.
Yeah.
Three of them have come together looking for the loot. I mean, challenging the copyright that Ed Sheeran
Yeah. You're
did for
right the
Think Out
first
Loud.
time.
And the thing is, Ed is it's quite a serious deal for Ed because apart
Yeah,
from
of
possibly
course.
losing millions of pounds, it
Mm.
probably opens up every song he's ever done to some sort of like legal case because, and I'll come to this in a minute, all
Mm.
pop songs and rock songs can only possibly be based on certain chord sequences or notes. There's only so many actually work.
What
And
did Bono say?
songwriters will tell you that they all
Yeah,
use the same sort of stuff and then produce something different. So
three notes.
Ed is so worried he turned up in court with
Yeah,
his guitar and actually played and sang for the judge. That's how worried he is. And the interesting thing is he
well,
talked
I'd have been
about his
even more
experience.
worried
Yeah.
after doing that. But anyway,
Well, yeah, I would find him guilty just on the spot for
exactly.
singing. But yeah, he talked about inspirations, all usually personal, his family or his
Yeah.
wife, etc. But he also said that when he writes choruses, he
Mm.
goes he bases it on vocal hook lines that he sings. And he says they're like phonetics. So basically, when he's
Mm.
writing a song, rather than writing just a straightforward, old-fashioned tune like Irving Berlin would have done, or
Yeah.
George Hammerstein or Lennon McCartney, or even Jagger and Richards, it's sort of
Mm.
put together in building blocks. And he comes up with a phonetic line that he likes the sound of for the chorus. Well, on this
Mm.
occasion, his phonetic line included the little run of chords from Let's Get It On.
Yeah.
But if you listen to, like, George Harrison had the same thing. It's funny that they've picked on Ed, who's really world famous, rather than someone else. And George Harrison got sued in the States in '76 for My Sweet Lord,
My
which
sweet
had the
Lord.
same chord
Yeah.
sequence as He's So Fine with the
Mm.
Chiffons, which I
Mm.
think came out in 1961. But My Sweet Lord sounds nothing like He's So Fine, although it has the same chord sequence in the chorus.
Mm.
And the best thing about My Sweet Lord, apart from the sort of like chanting religious chorus
Yeah.
bits at the end, is
Exactly.
George Harrison's guitar line, which has nothing to do
Mm.
with He's So Fine.
No.
And he
No.
lost the case. So
He did. He
Ed,
did lose the
Ed,
case.
Ed,
Yeah. Mm.
Ed could be in shaky ground, which is a bit unfair, I think.
Well, well, yes. I mean, what is it? I'm sorry, I sort of almost interjected earlier. I was just trying to remind myself. Didn't Bono talk about all you need is three notes and a guitar? And that's kind of where it
No,
is. I mean,
no, he
there's
said
only
three chords and the truth.
yeah,
Three chords and the truth.
three chord. Ah, that's the difference. So it's three
That's a
chords
more
on a guitar
contentious question.
and the truth. But what is the
Exactly. Yeah.
truth? So
And
what is the
Bono has the
truth to
truth.
these three notes here then? What is the truth?
Well, the truth is they're the same as Let's Get It On. But I was talking to Francis Rossi of Status Quo recently, and
Name dropping.
he's coming to Harrogate Theatre on Saturday, May the 20th, on
Yes.
his tunes and chat tour to like play some songs and
Mm.
talk about his career. And he's had like 60 hits, so he knows a lot about songwriting.
Yeah.
And I said to him, like, I said, the interesting about Status Quo is that when you were first famous in the '70s and you were known for all this heads down, no nonsense, boogie blues rock like down, down, deeper and down. If you actually listen to the albums, there's quite a lot of variety of material. It's not just,
There is. Mm.
no nonsense boogie. And he says, yeah, well, the thing is, all the different music genres are all very close together. They all use the same notes and the same chords.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's right. And if Francis Rossi says that's what happens, once you start suing songwriters for using the same notes or chords as some other song, where does
Mm.
it stop? Where does it end? All the famous hit makers in the world are going to end up getting sued by someone.
I mean, if you look at Status Quo and you look at UB40, who I think are the other band have had about as many hit singles as Status Quo, it would be fair to say that UB40 ended up sounding exactly the same on every single song, within just little different shades here and there. But actually, in the case of Status Quo, perhaps a little bit more variation. We're in the army now, for example.
Are we in the army? I hope not.
No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a statement
Oh,
that
that's a
we're in the
song.
army
Sorry.
now and we're in Sudan. No, no. I just make
No.
but basically, people's perception of Status Quo is that a lot of it sounded pretty similar, and as was the case with UB40, but it didn't stop people wanting to buy the singles over and over. So even within one band's canon, people don't have a problem with things sounding pretty similar overall. And it just seems to me here it's a case of someone trying to make some money from someone's talents, not theirs, from earlier on, against someone who is very current and probably the most successful musician around at the moment. Let's so go for a big name, see what happens, and if, as you say, if Sheeran loses, well, I'm not as great as a musical fan, but I think, as you say, he's a bloody hard-working musician, and actually, I'm not sure he deserves such a finding as this.
Yeah, well, Paul McCartney on the show he did a series with the brilliant producer Rick Rubin, in
Mm,
which he went how he writes songs, and he was sitting at the piano, and he showed Rick Rubin how if
mm,
you play "Great Balls of Fire" by Jerry Lee Lewis, the great rock and roll song of the '50s,
yeah,
slightly differently, you can use the same notes to produce one of the Beatles' biggest hits. Now, the Beatles' biggest hit he was talking about doesn't sound like Great Balls of Fire at all.
No,
But
no.
by just changing the time interval between certain notes, he can use the same notes to achieve an entirely different objective. And I think that's all Ed Sheeran and his songwriting partner, who I believe that one was Amy Wadge,
Yeah.
or Wadge was his songwriting partner. I think all they've
Ah,
done is use some of the
mm,
same notes, but to a different purpose, just like
yeah,
all
yeah.
the great songwriters do.
Right, exactly. It doesn't strike me as the ultimate crime. It really doesn't. But talking of criminal decisions, very disappointed as you are with the BBC cutting the hours of Mark Riley and Gideon Coe. They currently, between them, do 24 hours of broadcasting on BBC Six Music, and they're due to be cut to 8 hours of broadcasting. And you're contemplating whether this is the beginning of the end for BBC Six Music. And you won't be surprised to say that I utterly agree with you. Here are two hugely knowledgeable and interesting, constantly interesting in what they put on their shows. Gideon Coe, in particular, not necessarily a great radio voice in the
No,
tradition
a
of DJs of the past,
bit of a
but
boring
his
radio voice, quite
knowledge and
frankly.
his judgment on what to play has been stupendous for a very long time. And it just seems to me, again, what are they changing and why are they changing it? And who do they want to listen that isn't listening now? And if yet again it's young people who don't have time to listen to music because they're going out a lot at that time of the night, why not treat the people who do listen to your station with some bloody respect as to why they are listening to your station?
Well, I agree, Charles, but it's a bit of a complex subject. So, for example, when I listen to Matt Riley, Gideon Coe, you're right, they're
Hmm.
both great in what they represent in terms of their commitment to mainly guitar-based indie
Yeah,
music, both past and present,
yeah,
is really admirable and important to the radio station. But at the
yeah,
same time, when they come on, I feel like I've gone back to like 1981 or 1984. It just reminds me of listening to John Peel when I was a teenager, which all these years later may not be the most healthy thing. The other thing I remember is that just because they were there as reduced, they're still appearing on BBC Radio 6. And on top of that, BBC Radio 6 music is still awash in guitar bands as well as other stuff, and old indie tunes and new indie tunes. And Steve Lamacq still does his thing, and Guy Garvey plays a lot of rock music in his Sunday afternoon show.
yeah.
And in terms of nostalgia, BBC Six Music's probably too wedded to nostalgia. I mean, last week on BBC Six Music, they had a whole
Mhm.
day of music only from the year 2003 to celebrate the anniversary of the first Yeah Yeah Yeahs album. So for the whole day, all you got was different types of songs from 2003. So even though they're downgrading Gideon Coe and Matt Riley, the idea of BBC Six Music is ditching guitars and rock and indie and the past and nostalgia altogether is
Mm.
pretty much far from the truth. I think the worrying aspect of this is a crisis of confidence. It's not that
Yeah,
it's
I
necessarily
can
a
see
bad
that.
decision. It
Mm.
betrays a lack of self confidence and a lack of confidence that they know where they're going. So, for example, when the station began, and it is the world's best music station, it covers so many genres, plays
Yes.
so many tracks that aren't famous, breaks so much new music. It's a thoroughly admirable music station, even though I personally dislike about 50% of its output. But when it was launched about 2000, the average age of listeners to BBC Music in 2000 was 36. The average age now is in the middle 50s to early 60s.
Hmm.
So I think what they've realized is wait a minute, we're still popular, we're still doing well, but our age group is getting older and older and older. If we don't reverse this trend, at some point in the future, we literally will have no audience. So they're thinking, okay, we've got to get more towards new music. And I'm sure John Peel, without whom there would be no BBC Six Music, the late John Peel would have agreed with that because he never liked to live in the past. He was always moving forward. But it's more complex than that because John Peel also didn't like whiffly waffly boring music or safe music or bland music.
Yeah.
And BBC Six Music, in its attempt to please everybody and cover all the genres, does play an awful lot of noodly music and whiffly waffly music, which John Peel, I think personally, wouldn't have touched with a barge pole if he was still alive. So the whole subject is it, it's his the way that music industry's changed in the last 20 years is reflected in BBC Six Music's decision in terms of getting Bill Matt Riley. They can't quite work out how to get out of the hole that they can see coming towards them. It's not there yet, but they can see that problem looming. and they're trying to work out how to deal with it. And I'm not sure downgrading Giddy and Co. and Mark Riley to have more new music at night time in the evening schedule will end up being the solution, because, as you've said, the sort of audience they want, 30s and under, would they listen to BBC Music anyway? They don't
No,
access music through radio stations.
no.
They're all streaming and all algorithms and all
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. So
Mm.
the worst situation would be if they ditched the music that their hardcore listeners liked in favor of music they didn't like, and then didn't gain a new audience anyway.
They're not
That would
going to,
be
Graham,
the
they're not going to gain a new audience. Fact, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes change for change's sake, well, more often than not, change for change's sake, doesn't ultimately achieve things. The role of Radio 1 is to do exactly what you're describing. It is not the role of Six Music. The role of Six Music was to shut the DJs up, concentrate on the music, tell us what every single track is that's being played, rather than having a massive ego and not bothering to do that. Not being
Mm-hmm.
completely excited all the time, like you're on some kind of sugar overdose, having complete knowledge of music, and playing music. In the case of something like Guy Garvey's show, which I think is a fantastic piece of broadcasting every Sunday, he will play stuff from way back 20s all the way to the current release by Billy Martin, and he will keep championing. I mean, I use Billy as an example, ripper musician now settled in London, whose new album he's praising to the hilt. So that to me is the duty. You both acknowledge the great jazz music of the past, the blues music of the past, the 60s and 70s, the influence of that. Guy Garvey's show, for example, does all that. Then you have a show like Cerys Matthews, who will play music that no one else on radio, on any station, anywhere is playing. So I
Mm.
think it does fit the ingredients. If that means you've got an audience that's in their 30s to their 50s, that's because actually they've still got the attention span to be able to listen to music properly. And I'm sorry, Graham, that actually is the other problem that the BBC might need to address, which is when you play
Well, you're
three
right.
crap new songs from the 2020s in a row, you just stop listening. Full stop.
Yeah, I sort of agree. The only I would agree is as well, because you're right about chasing something new for its own sake. That's what the enemy started to do about 1998, and so
Yeah,
did
it did. Yeah.
Melody Maker was still going then, and it just made every step they went towards being newer and younger and trendier and easier to listen to read, the sales went down and down.
Mm.
If the enemy had actually stayed with its ethos of the early 90s, or rather the 70s, 80s, early 90s, it's only possible the enemy's sales would not have gone down so much. But they saw change happening. They thought, God damn it, we've got to change, otherwise we lose the audience. And every time they changed, the audience went down. So you're right. The risk of BBC Music is that changing for change's sake may just, kill the golden goose with the
I mean,
what's
Graham,
the
they've
terrible
already done
Haitian
this.
expression?
They've already done this with Radio 2, haven't they?
Mm.
And that's not going down well either, is it?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I think we both agree now, and there's nothing more boring than agreement, Charles.
Very disappointing because you did start off like you were going to completely go against everything I was saying, and I was very much enjoying that. But
Well,
never mind.
I haven't retreated, but it's very hard to argue when you agree with someone. That's the problem.
Now, Graham, I came across to Harrogate today. This is just an aside,
Hmm.
and on your recommendation to go to the Mercer Art Gallery,
Oh,
which is
wow.
featuring 900 bulls,
And
and
Martin Green.
and also the actual Turner Award winning piece itself, the one involving light and no
Light.
light.
Yeah, yeah.
Remind me the name of the artist.
Martin Creed. I've only said it 3 times.
Martin Creed. So there's the name of the artist. And now, so I arrived to find that it was closed due to unforeseen circumstances. So
Oh,
in
really?
fact, I didn't get the joy of not knowing whether Martin Creed's light was on or not on, because not a single light was on at the Mercer Art Gallery today. And it would have
There
been
wasn't light at the end
helpful.
of the tunnel then.
It was none, and it would have been helpful without wanting to kick off at the Mercer Art Gallery. But it was still running as if it were open, even when it was actually due to unforeseen circumstances. So please put that on your
Unforeseen
website
circumstances.
next time
I'm
and
gonna
stop
have
people
a
wasting
guess.
their time coming all the way across to Harrogate to see a
Yeah,
show that they couldn't see.
I'm gonna guess why it was closed for unforeseen circumstances. I'm gonna guess what that means. Either A, all the staff have suffered from some serious illness all at the same time.
Yep.
B, there's been some sort of flood through rain. There's been some sort of leak. This is
Ooh.
based on information. It could be absolute rubbish. I'm just
Ooh.
purely speculating. Could be a leak. Or C, it could be that Harrogate was so outraged that these balls lying on the floor, pretending to be art, basically there was threats to the Mercer Gallery, and they had to shut the gallery because Harrogate was going to storm it and remove Martin Creed's artworks and destroy them. That's the only three things I
stop
can
oil,
think
but
of.
stop art.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're going to glue themselves to the floor, and
Yeah.
mind you, that'd be a work of art. If you glue yourself
They
to the
would.
floor of
They
an art
would.
gallery,
That, yeah.
are you a work of art yourself? Is
Yeah.
that performance
No,
art?
absolutely.
Could be.
You wouldn't come unstuck doing that, Graham. That's a great idea. I like that.
Whoa,
Now
that's interesting. Yeah.
I feel it's time for an interruption.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm going to see some jazz flute this Friday.
You are going to see some jazz flute. Now,
Yeah. I mean,
what's the name of
I've
that
always wanted.
ghastly musician that used to play? He had it was one of those art. What is? He had sort of crinkly hair, and he played. Was it the flute he played?
Yeah.
I mean, what's his? An American musician, absolutely ghastly. Why are you going to go and see jazz flute?
Well, it's going to be good because it's David Bruce of Field Music, the wonderful
Ah,
indie art brothers
one
from
of the field
Sunderland.
music brothers. Yes.
Well, him
Right.
and his brother Peter, they formed the David Bruce Orchestra, and earlier this year, the David Bruce Orchestra released an album of songs written by David called "The
Yes.
Soft Struggles,"
Yeah.
very much in the style of Van Morrison's Astral Weeks meets
Yeah.
Nick Drake. But that's a simplistic interpretation. It still sounds like David Bruce and to
Yeah.
a degree field music, but it's a bit of a departure for David Bruce and field music, and it's
Mm,
actually a wonderful album with very, very, very good songwriting.
mm.
And they're playing it live. I think it's about their first time they played it live, and that's happening this Friday at the Howard Assembly Rooms in Leeds. So I'm going to
Out
see it, but I
assembly
know,
room, Graham. Room, not rooms.
oh well, I like to have more than one room, but I do believe the orchestra includes flute, which I've never seen a rock band use flute before because I never saw Jethro Tull in their prime. So it's
Ah,
going to be a new.
yes. I think I spotted a flute on Friday night at the James Lasted concert, the orchestral concert by James, which we may come on to, but we're running quite a
I
tight
think you should
ship.
tell me about that right now, Charles. I want to know what it was like. What was it like?
Well, I know that you think that my love of James rivals my love of Alan Ayckbourn's plays, and you wouldn't really be wrong in that. And you see, again, here's what we've said: how apparently, it's worthless to have people who are aged 36 to 56 appreciating music. Well, the average age of the James crowd is probably hovering somewhere in that field, and probably
Hmm.
older as well. And I watched a show that, in its own way, was utterly devotional. What was interesting about this gig? I mean, they're always looking to celebrate the wonders of performing live. I think that's the greatest joy that James have as a band that rediscovered themselves when they got back together again, and frankly have become a wholly different level, just an even more wonderful band. Now they have done orchestral music in the past. In 2011, they did orchestral work. This time, what's coming up is an album with the Joe Duddle or Doodle. I apologize for not quite knowing how to pronounce his name. He was the musical director on the project, or and the conductor, and they work here with an eight-piece gospel choir, the Manchester Inspirational Gospel Choir, and a 22-piece orchestra. Although I kind of lost count, I felt it hovered a little short of 22. But given how many members of James were on stage as well,
So do you reckon
and
about 18? Maybe 17, 18?
I think it could. I counted 19, but then
Oh,
it may,
yeah, yeah.
and there
Three
was a
short.
harp player. There was a harp player certainly,
Right.
and a double
20.
bassist in the middle. But but
Mm.
interestingly, they actually opened with a song called Magic Bus, and I was thinking, imagine what the Magic Tour Bus must look like with all these musicians on it. So
There'd be
when I
more than
say it's
one bus.
devotional,
Isn't
it's
Magic Bus
because
a song by The Who?
it is, but it's also a song that opened the set by James. So
Okay.
in this set, yes, they played some of the biggest hits, but they also did what Tim Booth referred to as some deep cuts, including a song, a pretty obscure B-side called "The Lake" that he thinks probably should have been on an album, Alaskan Republic, which isn't particularly well known. In fact, the first three songs, Magic Bus, Dust Motes, and The Shining, I think you'd be a James aficionado to
Mhm.
recognize it straight off. But what that established straight away was that this was not just going to be a greatest hit set with strings attached and with a gospel choir, but it
Yeah,
ended
but
up
did it
being,
suit a gospel choir?
oh,
Did they suit a
completely,
gospel choir?
absolutely.
Really?
So
Okay.
so when they did sometimes, and
Yeah, yeah.
the word soul came through in that
Of
song,
Blade. Yeah.
and they played Laid. Of course, they did do Laid, a slower version of Laid. But the interesting thing with with this was how, of course, you have a choral element to it, and it does become devotional. You add the word soul in there, singing about your soul, and it becomes even more devotional. I think it was they are a band, excuse me, that really thinks deeply about how to stretch themselves as musicians. They're fantastic players in James anyway. Andy Diagram, who was sporting a white skirt and in the second half a wedding white fascinator. So even that kind of look just looked fabulous within the show.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And Tim, as the front man as ever, with his amazing dance moves that he does, and he had his right arm. He's done some ligament damage. He's torn some ligaments in his right arm, but he wouldn't know it with the way that he was dancing. It was glorious as ever.
Hmm.
And what I love as well is just the way the audience, they open out their arms in a kind of devotional style, singing,
Oh
and it's
dear, I
not
don't like that.
a single
Too
line.
religious for me.
No, I was going to make the distance from that.
Mm.
Not religious that way. They wouldn't want. They would be thinking much more in terms of actually how you know arms out wide when you're watching a football game or whatever. It's much more that singing along to the
Well,
choruses.
the audience.
Yep, all singing along. Not
All
the not
right.
the band doing that. The audience doing the
All
arms
right,
out
okay.
wide singing.
Yeah.
It was a truly wonderful night. And this is, I mean, bands could coast if they just know, oh, we can sell out any ticket. But the reason they sell out tickets is that they give everything in their shows. And then and Tim's in his 60s now. I think Andy's probably in his 60s as well. Jim Glennie in his 60s. They're just, I do bang on about how good they are. But I think that, again, this thing that Six Music's deciding that, oh, no, we're worried about having older people that, only. I'm sorry, but I watch a gig like this, and the passion that people of our age show towards our music is something I think that should not be disrespected. And actually, it's because you've loved it for so many years. In this case, for 40 years of loving a band, and still they're
Yeah,
worth
well,
seeing. They're probably more worth seeing now
did,
than they've ever been.
I saw the James on their original Laid tour in
Yeah.
the early 90s, and they were phenomenally good live. And I've never been a huge James fan, but they were exceedingly good. But I've got
Mm.
a couple of questions about the gig, Charles, if I may.
I'm so
First of
sorry, I'm
all,
coughing, Graham. Mm.
first of all, did James last turn up?
Well, I realised that the James Lasted gag was actually they've done it themselves by calling it
Yeah,
the James
yeah,
Lasted
yeah.
orchestral tour because of
It's a
James
good
Last doing
pun.
orchestral versions. Full credit to them to actually
Yeah,
get that one out of the way themselves. You
that's
won't be
very good.
surprised to know that the late James Last didn't make his last ever appearance. No.
Hmm. Second question is equally frivolous and flippant.
Yes.
Do you think there's any merit in a, a duet between Tim Booth and Alan Ayckbourn?
uh, Aigborn is not averse to musicals. He has done musicals with Andrew Lloyd Webber.
There you go. You could have a James musical libretto by Alan Ayckbourn. That'd be good.
Well, thank you for that thought. Now, I do feel it's time for an interruption before our final topic of the evening, Graham.
Well, I was going to say that Edinburgh International Film Festival is definitely happening, but
Yes.
Edinburgh Film House has been sort of like 50-50 good news, bad news
Yeah.
about the film festivals.
Where are we now
Film
with it?
houses. Well, Edinburgh Film House had 16 bids
Yeah.
to buy the building, uh, and only two of them involved cinema chains or independent cinemas rather trying to
Mm.
buy it. And sadly, the bids by the cinema people weren't high enough, so it's been bought for 2.65 million by a group called Caledonian Heritables, who are a sort of pub
Heritables.
operator. They're a bit of a operator. So when I read they were a pub operator, I thought, oh, good grief, this means the end of the film house,
Yeah.
transform it the bloody big bar, blah, blah, blah. But it
Yeah.
turns out that this business group also owns a Theatre Royal,
Ah.
and they sort of run venues. So there is a hint that perhaps even though they're a pub operator, they might somehow retain it as a bit of a
Yeah.
cinema. But that's only speculation. There's no proof that's going to happen.
So we'll wait to see. So was it 2.6 million? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
that,
Well,
that
I'm
was
not.
the highest bid.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised if film company didn't have money outright to do that.
Mm.
Now, Graham, talking of films, last night I went to Cineworld and I watched the unlikely film title that you can give me in full,
The
starring Jim
Unlikely
Broadbent.
Pilgrimage of Harold Fry,
Yes.
which is a
Now,
strange title for a British movie.
yes, and it was an unlikely story in its own way, based, of course, on a Rachel Joyce novel. and
It sold
her,
6 million copies worldwide,
yeah,
a
and
big
a
selling
screen
point for
adaptation
Chris.
by Rachel Joyce, directed by
With a great,
Hetty,
with a
directed by Hetty MacDonald, I think, wasn't it? So,
Who directed the hit TV series Normal People, which is good.
which is a whole lot better than this film was. So over to you, Graham, because
Well,
you
haven't seen the
suggest rather
film yet.
negative thoughts about this film.
Yeah, I haven't seen the film yet,
Ah,
and some
you haven't
people,
seen it yet. Okay,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, but it doesn't matter. I can make a good judgment based on not seeing the film.
that's fair. That's fair.
But of course, it's fair. But I like the idea of it. Like it's shot in chronological order for kickoff. So like
Yes,
they actually filmed it because the story takes Jim Broadbent's character, who hears that his old friend Queenie is
Queenie.
about to die. So he writes her a letter and decides that no, the letter's not good enough. He needs to go and see her. But rather than getting a train or driving, like I think most people do, he thinks, no, I'm going to walk all the way to South Devon to where she lives in Berwick upon Tweed. But the film crew filmed it in chronological order and actually travelled that distance to make the film. So they stopped off at various points throughout Britain, including Northallerton, which we know well,
I did
South
spot
Stanley,
Northallerton. I did spot
yeah,
Northallerton.
South Stanley, not that far from our neck of the woods, and also Harrogate. Supposedly they went through Harrogate, although I believe it doesn't feature much in the film.
Did you spot South Stanley in it? I didn't. Well, sorry. How would
I
I
haven't
spot
seen
South
it.
Stanley in it? You haven't seen it
Yeah,
yet. I did spot
yeah.
Northallerton. Obviously, one spotted Berwick on Tweed as he entered that because one familiar place to us from our travels north. Um,
Mm.
but so Graham, that is
But
authentic. I have to say, I didn't feel
yeah,
that the film is very
yeah,
authentic at all, and
yeah. Well, the thing
it's
is,
a real struggle of a film. But anyway, your
this is the
contention,
point I was going to make. This is the point I was
yeah,
going to make because Jim Broadbent's a brilliant actor. I mean, he's got an Academy Award to prove how a brilliant actor
yeah,
is. Penelope Wilton's always good in anything she
yeah,
does, and you've got young Errol Cave, Nick Cave's son, in
yeah.
it as well. So in a lot of ways, this is a film you should think, oh, this is going to be good. But what let it down was that when I read it was about his heroic walk and it was uplifting, I thought, here we go again.
Mm,
Another sort of British comedy drama where the main character, although he's a bit of a failure, somehow has to be made to seem to be a hero, even though he really isn't a hero. And I thought back to all
yeah.
those other British films that are made about people who aren't really heroes, but for the sake of having a sort of Hollywood narrative, have to be treated like they are heroes. And so the
Mm,
film has an easy, these films have an easy balance between believable, plausible drama and corny Hollywood fake heroism that doesn't
yeah.
suit British movies because British movies only really excel when they're either costume dramas or they're based on being real and being truthful and being bold. We don't do Hollywood does fake really well. It believes in fake. The British don't. But there's been so many films made, like starting off with Brastoff in 1996, where a bunch of miners who lost their jobs in the strike they
Mm,
get to win a brass band competition, so they're heroes. Then you got the full Monty the next year. You got a bunch of unemployed Sheffield steel workers who, because they managed to get the contest to take their clothes off and become strippers, they're
mm,
somehow heroes. The steel industry's still dead. They still haven't got good jobs, but because they can strip off, wow, fantastic, the heroes. The mining industry's dead, but they've got a brass band. Ooh, fantastic. And there's so many British films, Bend It Like Beckham, Billy Elliot, where they treat like an important social subject as the background and then make someone who has a tiny bit of success or finds the courage to do something unusual as a hero, as if that compensates for the overall backdrop to the story. And
mm.
the British films just do that over and over again. And although these films are hits, so I shouldn't be criticizing it because they wouldn't make these films if the audience wasn't there to watch it. They'd stop making them. So these films are usually hits, but they're not great films. They're the sort of films that will end up on that archive film TV channel. What's it called again? The vintage one. It's been going a few years
Is
on
that
Channel 8.
Turner? Turner?
Channel no, it's British. It's Channel 82. It's on Channel 82 on your
Ah,
digital freebox TV,
yeah.
and it shows loads of films. And sometimes they're very good films, but quite a lot
Mm,
of it is like British films of the 40s and 50s that you know aren't great films, and you wouldn't want to watch
no.
unless you were absolutely desperate. And I think
Mm,
in decades to come, this whole sea of British comedy dramas where somebody has to be a hero, but at the same time it's a serious drama. I think these are all going to end up on the future equivalent of Channel 82, being watched by people who either want to live in the past or hate all the rest of the channels. I don't see them as a good movie. So when I read about the unlikely
Mm.
pilgrimage of Harold Fry, I instantaneously assumed that despite Jim Broadbent and Penelope Wilton, this wasn't going to be a good film.
I think we'll return to this subject next week because there's more to say on this.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.